SCA Minhag of the Week, Life Cycles, Berit Milah. In the last video, we discussed the opening of the Berit Milah ceremony and the Pisukim, the Abi Haben, the father would say. Now we're up to part 2, the actual Berakhot for the Milah, the Berakhot said by the Abi Haben and the Berakhot said by the Mohel himself. So, first thing is, before we make the Berakhot, we're seeing nowadays that people tell the Mohel, I hereby appoint you to be the Mohel. This was never our minhag to publicly make such a statement. If the Mohel is there, obviously he's the only Mohel that's there because the father of the child already told him in advance, please be here, this place, this time, with your tools ready to do the job. Everybody knows he's the Mohel that was appointed by the father. So there's no need for such a public announcement, and as I've mentioned, it was not our custom to do such a thing, and it's not necessary. Number 1. Number 2, we now get to the Berakhot. What is the order of the Berakhot? Now, most people will think that since we are generally adherent and loyal to Maran, Rabbi Yosef Karo, Shulchan Aruch, we would follow the order in Shulchan Aruch, and that would mean that first the Mohel would make the Berakhah of Al Milah, and then the father of the child would make 2 Berachot, the Hachniso and She'ahiyanu. But this is not the case. We have an ancient minhag, a minhag that predates the writing of Shulchan Aruch, the minhag of the Mustarabim, which means the ancient custom or the old custom of the native Jews of the Middle East before the arrival of those who came out of Spain and before the influx of those Jews and the input of the Shulchan Aruch. And the minhag is as such that the father will make the Berakhah of the Hachniso, and after that the Mohel will make the Berakhah of Al Milah, and then the father makes the Berakhah of She'ahiyanu. And now here is the order. So, first, the father says, Yodu l'Adonai hasto. He says, Breshut mora v'rabotai. Those present respond, Shamayim. The father makes the Berakhah, Baruch atah Amonai, Elokeinu melech ha'olam, asher kaddeshanu b'mitzvotav v'sivanu, l'hachniso b'brito shel Abraham Abinu. At that point, everybody present responds, Keshem she'echnasto l'berit, כך תכניסהו לתורה ולמצוות ולחופה ולמעשים טובים. All this is done while the father is holding on to the child. At that point, the Mohel takes the child from the father, moves it over to the chair that we mentioned before, that chair that has been set aside for Eliyahu Nabi. He places the child on that chair, and he says, Zeh hakiseh shel Eliyahu Nabi, malach berit zachur letob. He then lifts the child up from that chair and places the child in the lap of the Sandak. Sandak, who is sitting in the other chair. Now, who is the Sandak? The Sandak, Minhag in Halab, was the Sandak was always the paternal grandfather. Didn't make a difference. It was the first boy, the second boy, the third boy, the fourth boy. It was always the paternal grandfather. In almost every other place outside of Aleppo, the minhag was the first boy would be the paternal grandfather, the second boy the maternal grandfather, and then either they could switch back and forth like that, or they could give it out to others. Generally, it was not given to anybody but a grandfather. It was not given to an uncle. It was not given to a hacham. Generally, it remained in the family in that sense, as an honor to the grandfathers. Now, the Sandak now has the child on his lap. The Mohel is ready to do the Milah. Keep in mind, the child is wrapped up. The Mohel has to unwrap him and prepare the area to do the circumcision ceremony. At that point, the Mohel will recite a few Pisukim while he's preparing. Those Pisukim, which generally do not appear in our Sidurim, they are B'makelot barechu Elohim Adonai Mekor Yisrael, followed by B'froa Piraot B'Yisrael B'hitnadib Am Barechu Adonai, and finally Isfuli Hasidai Korete Beriti Ale Zabah. And we know of these Pesukim because they appear in the book Siyah Yishak from Hacham Yishak Alfiyeh. After those Pesukim have been recited and the child is ready for the Milah to happen, immediately the Mohel makes the Berakhot of Al Milah. He says, B'shut Morav Rabotai, everybody responds, Shamaim. Then he says, Baruch Atah Amonai Elokeinu Melech HaOlam Asher Qaddeshanu B'mizvotav V'sivanu Al HaMilah. He does the Milah. They turn to the father immediately to say the Berakhot Shehayanu, who makes the Berakhot, Baruch Atah Amonai Elokeinu Melech HaOlam Shehayanu V'kiyemanu V'higya'anu Lazeman Hazeh. At that point, break out into song. What is the song? So Minhag Halab, the way we practice it here in New York and the way it's been practiced in most places in the world, the song is Yahon El Sur. Yahon El Sur Behemlato. But there are other Halabi communities as well as the Minhag of Damascus. They sing a different song. It's Hayelid Hazeh Zecha Bibrito. Our Minhag here, at least in New York, is Yahon El Sur. And at that point, of course, the Mohel holds up a piece of gauze with the blood on it for everybody to see. Everybody knows the Milah was done, and a drop of blood at the very least came out, usually more than just a drop. Now, what else goes on at this point? In recent years, we're seeing a few different things. We're seeing either the recitation of Yagmidot, which is Amonai, Amonai, El Rahum B'Hanun, or somebody blowing the shofar, or something even newer, that they distribute cards like this. A wonderful prayer and remedy, is what they say in the back in English. And it says this is a prayer to say while the child is crying right after the Milah is done. So all three of these things, Yagmidot, shofar, and prayer from the card, none of these things are our minhag. We've never done them before. We don't do them. The Yagmidot and the shofar were instituted strictly in the time when there is a great calamity in the city, and only then at the discretion of the Hachamim for such a thing to happen. As far as the cards, it's a new custom, seems to have crept up in recent years, not based in anything of antiquity or even in an old minhag of any of the Sephardic community. And at that point, the Milah ceremony itself is done. We then move into part 3, where we get into other Berakhot.